Okay, we should be recording. And we'll go ahead and get started. How's everybody doing?
Okay.
A little under the weather. I'll make it.
Yeah, your autocorrect screwed you up, Lance.
Oh, yeah.
It said you had phenomena.
It's phenomenal.
I'm assuming pneumonia?
Yeah. I got it from the TBX barracks.
Oh, man. I'm sorry to hear that. I hope you get over it quickly.
The young lieutenant still give.
Yeah. Fluids.
Yep.
All right, so 501, we'll go ahead and get started. Good seeing you guys.
Awesome.
So we're doing LDR 360, Leadership Through Innovation, right?
Yes.
So I've told you that story about being in the wrong place, right?
Yes.
So week 4?
Yes.
Start of week 4.
And so chapters 6 and 7.
Yes.
So the whole idea this week is predominantly design thinking. And I'll cover a couple things just so you got it. And then you transition into what's called organizational or operationalizing innovation and entrepreneurship.
Right.
Noting that the opportunity assessment plan that they cover in the back of that chapter is not a business plan. They're two separate and distinct things. So don't confuse the two. One is just assessing and laying out an opportunity. The business plan that you'll cover in the next chapter is a lot more involved and requires a lot more detail, particularly as it relates to resourcing. So before we kick into that, you guys are nailing it. You're doing really well on your assessments, your weekly posts, and on your scenarios. Again, this week, I think your scenario is IKEA, right?
Yes.
So we just got done talking about L'Oreal, right?
Right.
Okay, and so within that, the big thing in L'Oreal was getting into what's called EO and MO, okay? Entrepreneurial orientation and market orientation, two separate distinct things. And so as you're going through your scenario, pulling out either one of those, going through a market or customer analysis for innovation and entrepreneurial activities, going through figures 5.2, 5.3, evaluating your organizational innovations against competition in market, which sounds suspiciously like doing a SWOT analysis, doesn't it?
Yes.
Okay. Any of those brought into your scenario brings you into an A. Okay. A couple of your fellow students absolutely rocked it. If you didn't quite get into that, but you still batted around the edges, I gave credit where I could. One of you nailed it, but you were assessed a penalty, and you know why.
Right.
Okay, so when we're talking SWOT analysis, if you remember, and can you see my slide? You can't see my slide. Hold on here. Sorry.
Yeah.
I apologize here. Okay. In LDR 300, it talked about being a strategic leader, and there were certain skills that were required. First was to anticipate threats and opportunities. And this is one of the reasons why I brought the SWOT analysis into the class, and that's one of the reasons why one of your questions talks about the business environment. This is the easy tool to use to analyze your environment. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Are there others out there? You betcha. There's a whole host. the end to get you thinking through some of these internal and external origin items helps you, particularly as you go through design thinking. We'll talk about it in just a minute. When we talk about challenging the status quo, that comes right out of your LDR 300. Okay, pushing the edge, right? The edge of the envelope.
Right.
Making leaders uncomfortable. Things that you were taught. There was a book out years ago called "Everything I Need to Know About Life I Learned in Kindergarten."
Yeah, kindergarten. Yeah.
Nap time and have a play mat. Anyway, I used to like to tell people everything I need to know about the Marine Corps I learned at the basic school or boot camp. In other words, you were pushed at boot camp, right?
Right.
So that's all in a means of developing strategic leaders. And I know it sounds almost patently absurd that we were teaching leadership at boot camp, but think about what you were being taught at boot camp. You were given basic leadership things. You first learned JJ did tie buckle. You learned certain general orders. You learned how to challenge the status quo to a degree. You had to, I think probably the best thing I ever heard was an Army general once said, it's okay to think outside the box, but before you do, you damn well better know what's inside the box.
Mm.
And so you learning about your new institution or organization, but you were also expected to understand as the Marine Corps was expecting out of you. Knowing that promotion was based on potential for the next higher rank, not necessarily on how well you accomplished your present rank. And then strategic leadership, and one of the reasons why CEOs get paid the big bucks is to be able to interpret trends. In other words, to see the future. Great quote, and you can see it on my slide here. Hindsight now is foresight later. In other words, a lot of people are looked at as some type of fortune teller when all they're really able to do is interpret what's happened in the past and do some type of trend structured analysis to try to derive something in the future. And you do it every day. But a lot of people are prescient only really because they're good at reading what's happened in the past and be able to interpret that in the future. Nobody can tell the future. There is nobody who knows that. What you do have, though, is people that are able to identify trends to get after this mystical temporal analytics piece. And there are certain companies out there making some good money on just that. In other words, they will help you in whatever organization you have to do what is called a trend structure analysis. And that's taking a look at just large trends and then slowly necking them down into that organization or that area that you were looking for. Just kind of same thing with football. You'll see it. Football formations and styles, change and morph over the years. But really, there's nothing new out there. It's just kind of a standard, okay, this is kind of what we used to call the wishbone, and now it's this. Okay? And then in the end, you got to have what's called buy-in. In other words, you got to get people on board with what you're trying to implement. And so that's why we go through some of that SWOT analysis. All right. And again, this is a template that's out there. I think this one's a very good one. I've used it before, but certainly you can find whatever works for you. And again, just as you learned in LDR 340, when it talked about evaluation or with your problem diagnosis, or I'm sorry, your decision, it all gets down into the criteria. What is the measures you're going to use as part of that evaluation? What are the measures you're going to use in your SWOT analysis? And that's a tough one. That's where you got to do a lot of work, because Measures of effectiveness and measures of performance are tough to understand up front and even more difficult to develop and measure exactly what it is you want. And history is rife with people making mistakes. Okay. You guys, you both got your subject in for your final paper. Anthony, I get you down for the Postal Service. And Lance, you said Tesla, right?
That's correct.
Okay, I look forward to reading what you guys come up with, okay? All right, so before I show you some of chapter 6,
Hey, real quick, can I say something about the since you mentioned about the final paper?
yeah,
I was gonna ask, on a grading rubric
yes,
that you sent out. My question, I just wanted to make sure, because it says, explanation of how innovation enhances organization's success. Now, are you want me to tell you about the post office, or you want me to tell you in general how it'll help, the success of a company?
the reason you picked a company was to talk about the company.
Right. Okay. I just want to make sure.
So in a broad scheme, you're going to say, here are some of the things I'm making you determine some criteria.
Okay.
Okay? So you're going to come up with things that innovation can help an organization succeed. Hopefully, you're going to find some of those in the U.S. Postal Service.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
If not, you're going to find that they're not doing the things they need to innovate, and they're going to fail. You see what I'm getting at?
Yes, sir. Got it.
So I'm moving you a little bit further, because if we went with just the way it was originally structured, you would give me a very broad, generic
Right.
organization has to succeed, has to be innovative to succeed.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. I got it. I'd like to see you really dive into it a little bit, and in a study, no kidding, give me a concrete example of your chosen organization,
Got it.
of where they are or they are not. So I'm kind of making you pick that criteria. Which criteria you use is fine. If you want to say, hey, U.S. Postal Service is now delivering Amazon packages on Sunday. Sounds pretty innovative to me.
Yeah.
And I probably just stole some of your thunder, or I just helped write half your paper. Lance is looking at me like, damn, help me write mine. Okay.
I'll put you in the sites.
I'll help you on yours, Lance. It was innovative, rocketing a Tesla in outer space with Rocket Man there.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Okay, does that kind of get after it for you, Anthony?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Yeah, the key on it is I'm focusing you in on an organization. In the end, I'm glad you brought that up, because I'll show you here. In the end on that, remember your position statement.
Right.
Okay. So, can you see the whiteboard behind me? Or do I need
Yes.
I barely can see what's written on it right now because it's at an angle.
All right. So,
Yes, I can see it though.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I was about ready to write something on here, but I think I'll just forego it. Okay. So I'll kind of talk through it for you real fast, okay?
All right.
All right, so when we talk about a position statement, we are talking about making a conclusion and then the evidence used to support it, right? Right?
Right. Yes.
Okay, so think of this paper as an evaluation, and you're going to identify some criteria. That position statement would be very easily written as to, is the U.S. Postal Service innovative or not innovative? And then you would give your reasons for your position. All right?
Yes. Yep.
If we are going to say the U.S. Postal Service is innovative, we would hopefully have 3 to 5 reasons for you to say that. And that's your evidence. And that's what you're going to talk about. Those innovation concepts that you learned. I'm going to hold up the textbook. In this, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. In an evaluation, you still have to qualify your statement. So your paper, if it reads, U.S. Postal Service is innovative because of 1, 2, and 3, there is a position or part of your paper where you're going to have to say, there are areas that they are not innovative, or they're missing the boat on this. And the reason we do that is for analytical honesty and for you to consider the importance of evidence, just as your LDR 340 text talked about, right?
Yes.
If I told you that every day I had in the Marine Corps was a good day as an evaluation, you would look at me like, yeah, bullshit. Excuse my language. Right?
Right.
If I told you not every day was a good day, but overall I wouldn't change anything, that probably sounds a little more honest, doesn't it?
Yes.
So that's what I'm trying to drive you at here with the paper. I know you can go find the definition of innovation. I still want you to put it in your paper. And again, where do you think I want to see the definition come from?
The book. Yeah.
All right. Because this is our ability to mark you on understanding the concepts and the material. Okay. As you go in there and you explain the importance of innovation, that is fairly broad and would apply not just to your organization but others, right? But I'm trying to neck you in because in the next paragraph, when I talked about how it enhances your organization, then what you talked about in that preceding paragraph probably ought to be in that next paragraph, right? In other words, if you're going to tell me innovation is important because of 1, 2, and 3, then hopefully you found that in your organization. If you're telling me they're innovative. Do you see what I'm getting at?
Yes.
Okay. Then we don't forget this is a leadership class. Okay. And we understand that a leader is responsible for what his organization does or fails to do. If all else fails, if you get lost, remember the 7 keys to organizational success, right?
Yes.
3 who's and the 4 hows. In other words, you're going to speak to your protagonist or whoever you picked in that paper and kind of personalize it in a sense that, hey, he needs to keep doing these things, or I would explain to him he should take a look at X, Y, or Z. Okay? Does that help?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay. This is going to be your more difficult of the 2 papers. Okay? And the reason for it is this one, I want to know what you're thinking. Okay? Not send you out on some scavenger hunt. Okay? You're going to have to think through this one. The second paper is about personal innovation. Thinking about a personal, change that you need to make. Right?
Yes.
Okay. So when we talk about the week 8 paper, we're talking about your strengths and weaknesses related to innovation. I should be seeing that on the screen now.
Yes.
Okay. Problems or processes in your life related to innovation, and then applying some of the concepts from the text. Okay, tonight I'm going to give you a very easy one that's just going to sound so simple you're going to actually probably chuckle. Okay? And it came right out of chapter 6. It was staring you right in the face. And you probably, I'm sure you realized it, but as soon as I link the concept to something you did in the Marine Corps, you're going to see it right off the bat.
Mm.
All right?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. And then your personal innovation plan, how you intend to strengthen and improve your capabilities. All right? That almost sounds like an innovation, an individual plan. Do you remember a previous class where you had to write something like that?
Yes.
Almost starts to sound like a Potter's 8-step, or you had it in LDR 400.
Right.
All right? Okay, what you do or how you do it matters not to me. But this needs to be more than I intend to strengthen and improve my capabilities by communicating better and reading. Okay, that sounds great. Oh, I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to lose weight. Okay, that's not a plan. That's a goal. Okay, I intend to sign up at Gold's Gym for $14.99 a month. I'm going to stop eating pizza on Thursday night, and I'm going to give up scotch. Oh, I shudder just to think. All right?
Yes, sir. Got you.
Okay. If that helps you on the questions, I'm going to show you chapter 6 real fast. Everybody okay?
Good.
All right.
Yeah. Good.
Okay, so you're going to get these slides. All right. Nothing magical here. Gave you a couple photos up front. They're a classic. One is a great quote. On the left-hand side of the screen, you see a gentleman speaking. Talks about the biggest threat to innovation is internal politics and an organization culture that doesn't accept failure or doesn't accept ideas from the outside or cannot change. How many times have we seen that? And that might have helped you on your homework this past week. The box you see down there is actually, it looks like a TV, doesn't it?
Yeah, looks like one.
Okay, what this is, though, is this is a bicycle manufacturer. And they were sending out very expensive bicycles, and they were getting a lot of returns from customers because they were being mishandled, because people knew it was a bicycle. They just throw it. It almost looked like it went through a shredder. In fact, the marketing analyst for the company said it did. They were going through a shredder. So they started packaging their bicycles to look like a TV screen, to even include putting a TV screen photo behind the bike. You see that?
Mm.
Guess what? Huge improvement in handling of their product and a marked decrease in exchanges because of damaged goods. Innovation that was not tied to their product. It was tied to how they shipped and delivered it. Some of your innovations isn't in the product, it's in the service. How you deliver that service. Okay?
Yes.
All right. So design thinking, right? So design thinking, you got your textbook?
Yeah.
So if you look there at the start of chapter 6, it tells you that there are 5 steps or 5 key elements in design thinking, right?
Yes.
Page 109. What's the first one?
Defining the problem.
Define the problem. All right. If you look at the bottom of the slide, you'll see McPeepee, Marine Corps planning process. right? What's step one of the planning process?
Problem framing.
Problem framing, define the problem. And that's true for all the military planning processes. In fact, this slide is what I used to use for my command and staff class that showed the Marine Corps planning process against the Navy's, against the military decision-making process, i.e. the Army, and the joint operational planning and crisis action planning. And you'll see that there are some very incredible similarities, but there are also some marked changes. But when we talk about a personal innovation plan, or if we're talking about setting up our organization and we're talking about this concept of design thinking, a new approach, right? Your text says, to create
Yes.
through innovation. We're talking about define the problem, develop options, select an option, and execute. Okay, how is that different from the Marine Corps planning process?
Not much at all.
It isn't. Okay, so if you think of what you've already learned, then you know that defining the problem is problem framing. You know developing the options is COA development. You know determining the direction was going into compare and decide, determining which option ultimately is the best. And how did you do that? You would war game it, right?
Right, yeah.
Then you
Scenario.
select the best solution based on criteria, and it all gets down to BAMSIS, right?
Yeah.
Most critical steps, supervise or execute. That's all it is. Just gave you part of your paper, didn't I? That's a process, isn't it?
Yes.
It's a process. And that's all they're talking about. Okay, critical concepts that they talk about in your text on that chapter. Talk about organizational barriers. They give you 3. Lack of commitment, lack of performance indicators. You're not measuring the right things. Okay, remember in Marine Corps planning process, you write an op order and you select tasks for your subordinates to do. You've got to have some means of assessing that task, right?
Right.
I tell you, Anthony, or you, Lance, I want you to cross the line of departure tomorrow at 06. Something better tell me that you've done that, right?
Correct.
Normally, I will tell you, report to me, you've crossed the LD. Nowadays, we got, systems and blue force tracking, and, I could probably have a drone over you to make sure, but
Cell phones.
that's all we're doing, exactly.
Yeah.
And then the barrier of resistance to change. Okay. 6-1 gives you characteristics of a design thinking organization. These are good stuff to look at. And then a future. Okay. They give you some examples. IDEO, Redbox, IKEA. Okay. And that was good when the text was written. We'll see how well it stands up. And then the future, okay? I talked to you about the temporal analytics, right? Ask the question, scan the world, map the possibilities. Ask the next question. In other words, you're looking at an aspect of, in part, being open to what's going on. Not being tied to, but that's the way we've always done it. It might be, I've asked you this question 1,000 times, and you're probably getting tired of me asking it. And then that one time I don't ask it, something's changed and I should have, And so there's a lot out there. Within that, the last paragraph they give you in that chapter talks about creative intelligence, right?
Right.
And a prime focus of CQ. Okay, we're not talking about GQ, okay? We're talking about creative quotient. And I gave you I sent you out a supplemental article today.
Yes.
creativity, and you might want to take a look at that. Okay. It's this one right here. Okay. And what it talks about is there are people that say there is a creativity quotient test out there, not unlike an IQ test. You took one when you joined the Marine Corps that calculated your GT score. Well, people have different IQs, and that's been a pretty solid measurement of intelligence. Problem is, it's really not a good one for creativity. So getting that in your organization is very difficult, and that's why I think you'll find this article interesting. All right. Chapter 7 talks about good and after available opportunity. Okay, you remember we talked about gap analysis, where we're at now, where do we want to be, how do we get there?
Yeah.
Very much the same as it relates to market opportunities. Where are the gaps? Where are things not happening right now? Okay, Google found a gap. It was taking too long for people to go to the library and use the card catalog system to find information. So Google tied thousands of servers together and innovated it to the point where you could type it into your computer wherever you're at.
Mm.
And then a trimming technique, which is a way of reducing or eliminating or developing new ideas. Trimming technique is covered on page 124.
Mm.
And within that, oh, I'm sorry, the slide is showing you a gap analysis. These are things you would have already read. I'm just bustering through because we're running out of time. Product line distribution, okay, showed you a gap when I showed you the box of the bicycle manufacturer. Okay, that was a distribution gap. But these are all elements for identifying market areas, okay? All right, within a trimming technique, your textbook lays them out in a certain order. Recipient can form the function itself. I'm reading off of page 124.
Right.
Recipient can function, can be eliminated, 1 through 6. Well, these are all recognized industry standards. The industry, though, numbers them differently. So if you really want to know the right order, in the box that I've blue highlighted on the left, that gives you the real order. The first is the function doesn't need to exist. We used to have Walkman. I don't know if you remember a Sony Walkman.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We don't need it anymore, right?
Right.
You get your music off your phone, right?
True.
Okay. A new or niche market can be identified for the newly trimmed product. Number 6. The example I'll give you there is mustard gas. So years ago, scientists were looking for a cure for a certain type of blood cancer, certain type of leukemias. And in their research, they realized that there was a incident in World War II off of Alameda where a Navy ammunition ship exploded. And some of the rounds that they had on that ship were mustard gas. I know World War II, but yes, there were mustard gas shells. They weren't used. Anyway, the sailors that responded to that that casualty, that did the damage control, inhaled some of that mustard gas. And it was found that their white blood cell count dropped precipitously low.
Mm.
Well, in a blood cancer, you want to kill the white blood cells. Your body's making too many of them. And so one of the treatments for leukemia is not mustard gas, but is a derivative of mustard gas, nitrogen mustard. So there you have used a trimmed product, a neck down, death-making product to help save a life. All right, give you a good little cartoon. Look at these at your leisure. But the idea development process is a standardized approach for developing innovative ideas. Okay, and the first is you got to understand the idea and the competition. Okay, and that is looking at what's called NAICS. Okay, and your text talks about NAICS. NAI.
Yeah.
Okay, NAICS is a industry standard, North American Industry Classification System. That's what NAICS is.
Mhm.
What happens is that as you go in and try to develop an idea, first thing would be good to know is, do other people have the same idea, right? You know, if you're trying to find a brand new mousetrap, you'd want to go in and see what kind of mousetraps have been made.
Right.
So you would go into NAICS, you would find the industry that best describes that idea and go in and see what patents are out there, what ideas have already been developed.
Mhm.
Then you determine the need, okay, right? If there's not a need for it right now, why do you want to try to bring it to market? And then you would, if there is a need, then you want to try to see what you can develop and if there is a good solid market out there. Okay. In the end, you're getting after 7.1, the opportunity assessment plan. This is not putting the cart before the horse. What you're trying to do is first evaluate the idea and then go through some rigor. And if this bears out, then you could go into the next chapter and start doing your business plan and doing the real nut work on assessing the resources that it's going to take to do this. You don't want to go in and do all the resources and then figure out it doesn't make any sense, right?
Mhm. Right.
But there, time and again, there's organizations that'll do that. Okay, there's organizations that will get after bringing something to market without fully developing whether there's even a market for it.